Yep. Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the North Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Reggie Labour, the Committee Chairman. For those, and I know there are some of you who are very familiar with this process, there may be others who are not as. I will do the usual administration and then I'll talk you through the running order of tonight's meeting. Can I do apologies for absence first, please?
Councillor Becky Hagar has sent her apologies and Councillor Brightman is substituting.
Are there any declarations of interest in matters coming before tonight's meeting? No, good. The minutes of our previous meeting, which should be the 2nd of October and are in the bundle. Can I take those as accurate? Thank you. The agenda we are taking is the one that was published by the Head of Planning and there have been no changes to it. Items 6, 7, 8 and 9 are Part 1 items and are taken in public. I have 3 enforcement reports in Part 2 and Part 2 matters are private and will not appear on the YouTube recording either. And for those matters there will be no public audience. This meeting is on the Council's YouTube feed. It is live and there are people who actually watch it afterwards. The camera is facing me, so it catches all of those who are around the table here. Anyone who speaks to us as an applicant or agent or anything like that from that table, you will also be visible. Those of you sitting nice and quietly in the audience, no one will see you. Can I ask, please, that everybody speaks clearly into their microphones, because otherwise the recording does get a little difficult for those who are trying to follow it. And that applies to those around here, probably more, actually, than people who are addressing us with petitions. We are not expecting a fire alarm tonight, so therefore if the fire alarm does go, we will be treating it as real. The normal best exit will be out through the doors in which you came in, and then straight ahead of you through the next set of doors and down the staircase, or the exit immediately behind me. But the officer team will lead us out, and I'm sure we'll get there pretty quickly. Could I ask, please, that all mobile phones are switched off or at least silent? That is particularly aimed at committee. When your item is done, if you could leave quietly, it would help us get on with the rest of the meeting. Members have all had the pack that was circulated some week ago now. There will be an officer presentation on each item. For those items with a petition, which is items 6 and 7, petitioners have a right to address us for 5 minutes. If you watch the traffic lights, you get 4 green. When it goes amber, you're in your final minute. When it goes red, that is it. Members may ask you questions, they may not. Questions will be normally to clarify what you've said. If you've just basically explained something they already understand, they'll leave you alone. If you raise any new planning issues that require clarification from the officer team, I will take those up afterwards so as not to take them out of your time. As a reminder, the only speaking rights are those. There is no dialogue with the audience apart from that. On any item where there is a petition, regardless of whether the petitioner addresses us, applicants or their agents have a right to address us. I haven't seen the ward councillors in the room and I'm not aware that any are intending to join us tonight, but they may do, and they also have the right to speak if they so choose. Okay, introduce you to the large number of people who sit around me. I don't vote on planning committee unless we manage to get to a tie, and that very rarely happens. We don't normally get a 4-4. We do get some interesting results, but not normally a 4-4. I'll start down on my far right this week. Councillor Brightman, Councillor Radier, Councillor Higgins, Councillor Tuckwell, Councillor Flynn, and moving to my left, Councillor Farley, Councillor Sansapuri and Councillor Oswald. So they're your voting councillors tonight. Richard Michalski is doing highways. Ed Lawton is our presenter tonight. James Roger, the Head of Planning, Officer's Advice as required. Liz Penny from Democratic Services is our clerk. Nicole Cameron is our legal advisor, and welcome back to Nicole, because it's her first North Planning back. So, welcome. That's enough from me. I'm going to go straight, please, to item 6, which is 11 Woodgate Crescent, Northwood.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 6 on the agenda is a retrospective application for retaining walls to the rear and sides and levelling of a garden area at 11 Woodgate Crescent in Northwood. The application site comprises of a two-storey detached dwelling house that is located within the Gate Hill Farm estate area of special local character. To the rear of the site are the playing fields associated with St John's School, which are allocated as green belt. A dense screen of trees is sited to the rear of the boundary. So I'll take members through the plans. The site here, and then you can see the green belt to the rear. It's the existing layout, and this is the proposal. And you can see here where the retaining wall will be located, or is located. Here you can see the proposed cutout. I try not to blind any members. It's the location of the retaining wall, and there's the aerial. These are the site photographs. This is the front of the property, and this is to the rear. And here you can see the retaining wall. Okay, this application was deferred from the 12th of September committee as further discussions with the council's tree and landscape and flood and water management officers were required. Insufficient details have been provided with the application regarding flood risk management, proposed drainage arrangements and arboricultural details. As such, the council specialists are unable to determine that the scheme will not have an unacceptable impact on flooding and on the existing trees. The application is therefore recommended for refusal. Members will note there are no addendum items to the application. However, there is a petition of objection. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, I would remind everyone on this one that the extensive alterations to this property do already have planning permission. We are considering the retaining walls and the garden only. I would also remind members that I know the petitioner circulated some photographs, which I think I saw in September as well, which members have all had, because I can see them on various people's desks. Susan House, are you? And press the button when you're ready, but I think you know the process.
Good evening. I'm speaking on behalf of the Gate Hill Residents Association. I hope you've all had the opportunity to look at the photographs in the handout. There's a new page 6 compared to the previous handout. This is an extremely unneighbourly application, one which has caused damage to several neighbours and which is contrary to policy. Firstly, BE38. To gain planning permission to build the extensions to this property, the applicant submitted a design and access statement which discussed the importance of landscaping, and they even quoted from BE38. Yet they have gone on to ignore this policy. At the rear of the property is a nature conservation site which is listed in the Hillingdon local plan. It's greenbelt woodland. One of the oak trees is located 1.5 metres from the pile wall. It has a diameter of 1.1 metres, which gives its root protection area a radius of around 13 metres. So that's well beyond the wall and under much of the back garden, which has been extensively concreted over now. The council does not usually give consent for extensive piling in root protection areas, and I have yet to read an arboriculturalist report which would be in favour of this. There can be no doubt that the pile wall and the removal of the clay soil has taken place in this oak tree's root protection area. The tree is already showing signs of damage as it is growing fungi at the bottom, something trees do when they are not happy. It should have been obvious to the builder and the architect that damage was going to be caused to the trees. It's also contrary to policy BE38 and contrary to development management policies DMHB 14A, B and D, amongst others. This brings me to the matter of flooding. I would like to set the context of this property in terms of relative levels. Woodgate Crescent is at the top of a steep hill in the Gate Hill estate. There is a downhill slope from right to left as you look at the property from the road, and there is a slope in the back garden from the woodland at the rear down to the house, and then there is a further drop in level from the house to the road. This substantial subterranean pile wall with a 2-metre wall on top is over double the height of this room, and the builder has verbally admitted that it has gone through the water table and altered the natural water courses in the clay soil. Surface water naturally runs from the highest point to a lower point, so it should really have been no surprise to the builder when excavating the clay that this would cause water to run from this property to the next door neighbour's property downhill, causing significant damage to the property. We believe that his solution of diverting the water into the already stretched public drains is totally unacceptable, adding to the flooding risk to properties in the area, and is totally contrary to both local and national policy. The pile wall continues to divert the natural streams in the clay to the neighbouring properties, and the damage to the trees will significantly reduce the amount of water they are able to take up. The flooding problems this applicant has created cannot be ignored. On the plans in front of you, there are no suggested drainage solutions despite the flooding and damage which has been caused. Submitted photos 13 and 14 show some of the drainage pipes which have now been buried under a concrete surface, and the project is now complete. Photo 21 shows cracks appearing already in the resin surface, and there are also cracks appearing in the wall. If the construction work had stopped when the council's enforcement officer told the applicant that he needed to submit a planning application 7 months ago, the drainage issue could have been more easily addressed then. Instead, you are presented with a retrospective mess. We would like to thank the case officer for discussing this application in detail with the council's tree and flooding officers. We agree with their conclusions, and we are very grateful for the officer's recommendation for a refusal of this application. We also ask that the council ensures that the applicant is made to take measures to correct these policy breaches for the safety of the residents on Woodgate Crescent and the wider estate. So we ask that you also will agree to refuse permission for this unneighbourly application. Thank you.
Do members have any questions? Councillor Radia.
Thank you. Did you say there's been direct damage as a result of this work to the neighbouring property? And could you tell us in more detail exactly what has happened to the neighbouring property?
I think the best person to ask really is actually the neighbour. Is he allowed to answer that question? No, you want me to? Okay. Basically, the neighbour has submitted photographs to Mr. Roger when this application first came up, and there's lots of photographs of cracks in the patio, in the paving. The fence is rotting. They had hanging baskets on the fence which all fell off, and they had just had water literally pouring down the garden, down the grass, down all the paving stones. It was an absolute mess. And that's just from the water. There's obviously been other things, but that's just from the water. I hope that's right.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Nope, I think that's done. Yep. I'm not getting any more signs. That's done. Anyone here on behalf of the agent or the applicant looking to speak on this one? No? Okay. No one's putting their hand up, so we move on. In that case, we open it for debate. It's up for refusal for failure to provide a drainage strategy and tree surveys. Sorry, did you want to come in? Okay, I'll let...
Sorry, it's just the informative number 3 is meant to have A, B or C rather than A, B and C. So if I can just ask for delegated authority to sort out the third informative. Apologies for that.
It was Councillor Oswald followed by Councillor Flynn.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, a bit concerned about the root protection area being impinged on, basically. I think we're all pretty much aware that once you get into a root system and you start cutting through it, it can destabilise trees, apart from damaging them and maybe even, if you're really unlucky, killing them off. And also the flood and water management issue, well, I'm just astounded by that. I'm going to move the officer's recommendation, Chairman.
Okay, I may be about to get a second, but I may get something else. Councillor Flynn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'm frankly slightly troubled by the officer's report, by particularly the expert tree and landscape officer's comments. These are the experts and they have issues with this. That's good enough for me. Obviously, we've also heard the experiences of the local residents, which does not sound at all like a happy experience at the moment. So, with all that in mind, and the images that we're seeing before us, and the impact this has had, obviously, on flooding and the soil structure in the local area, I'm very happy to second Councillor Oswell's proposal there.
Okay, on that basis, all those in favour of refusal, please clearly show. Thank you very much indeed. I would ask, and I'm sure he will, that the Head of Planning refers the matter to enforcement to see where we go from here. And I will leave it at that for now. I move now to item 7, 22 Breakspear Road South in Ickenham. Ed, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 7 on the agenda is an application for a single-storey rear extension, first floor rear and side extension, enlargement of existing dormer with 6 side roof lights, creation of basement, conversion of garage to habitable use with alterations to front elevation, porch to front, and single-storey outbuilding to rear for use as a gym. Properties fronting Breakspear Road South have a staggered formation, such the application site sits behind number 20 to the south and forward of number 24 to the north. If I can take members through the plans. This is the application site. This constraints plan, you'll note the land on the other side of Breakspear Road South is green belt. This is the proposed block plan. This is the existing ground floor plan, first floor, existing elevations and proposed elevations. This is the proposed basement, proposed ground floor plan, and if I can just point out to members, there is concern about this depth here and the impact on the neighbouring property. Proposed first floor plan, and this is the existing and proposed roof plan. And this is the proposed gymnasium in the rear garden. This is a section through the site, aerial photograph, and then here are some images of the rear of the property in its current state in the rear garden. It's the front of the property, and here you can see the staggering of the properties. So this is the neighbouring property, which is staggered to the rear, and this is some wider street scenes. Apologies, the sun was shining when these were taken, so it's not too clear. So the scheme at present is considered to be bulky and excessive in scale, resulting in development that would be out of keeping with the area. In addition, it would be harmful to the amenity of neighbouring properties, in particular because it would extend approximately 6.7 metres at 2-storey height beyond the rear of the adjacent property. The applicant has failed to demonstrate the scheme would not result in increased risk of flooding, and there is also a rejection to the loss of the tree and proposed level of hard surfacing to the front of the property. The application is therefore recommended for refusal. Members will note again there are no addendum items, however there is a petition of objection. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Petition on this one, Mr. Piper. If you take a seat at the table, you press the button on the middle. When you're ready, it will light up, and then we start the timers at this end.
Good evening. My name is Richard Piper. I live with my wife at number 20 Breakspear Road South in Ickenham, directly next door to the property to which this planning application relates. Number 22 has been rented out by the present owners for a number of years, increasingly falling into disrepair with the garden neglected and overgrown, as you've just seen. This has worsened since the last tenants left in the spring, and boarded windows and the general state of the frontage show clearly that the property is currently empty. We were hopeful of improvements when the owners forewarned us of summer renovation work ahead of them taking up residence themselves. But in July, the London Borough of Hillingdon informed the owners of the 3 immediately neighbouring properties, along with the Ickenham Residents Association, of this planning application, rather more than some renovations. The Residents Association expressed concerns regarding the fact that plans for such massive renovation work were sorely lacking in dimensions. The construction of the basement could endanger neighbouring properties, and the provision of services in the home gym outbuilding could lead to later problems with it being used as separate residential accommodation. We 3 immediately neighbouring households discussed the matter and circulated a letter to others in the vicinity, and very strong opposition to the proposals emerged. 13 households contacted LBH, and 43 people signed our petition opposing the application. I'm confident that more would have done so if I had had time to pursue it further. No one in the surrounding properties expressed approval for the plans. When we received the planning report from the council, we were of course delighted to find that it recommended refusal, and it addressed many of the issues raised by us, our neighbours and other residents. We would fully endorse the words of the officer's conclusion: the scheme is considered to be bulky and excessive in scale, resulting in a development which would be out of keeping with the general pattern of development within the area. In addition, it would be harmful to the amenity of neighbouring properties by virtue of loss of outlook, loss of sunlight and overbearing impact. It is also likely to result in a detrimental sense of enclosure to neighbouring properties. A further concern we have as neighbours is that the property design, with its 1 bathroom plus 4 shower rooms plus 5, but could easily be made into 7 or 8 bedrooms, plus gym and games room amenities, but little remaining garden, is less of a family home, but more an opportunity for continuing a rental proposition, but on a larger multiple occupancy scale, which would have impacts on noise, traffic and parking. We also felt that the lack of dimensions on the plans submitted were meant to hinder easy interpretation of intentions. There were also errors in the diagrams submitted with regard to positioning of current windows and chimneys, which calls into question the sense of the new plans. We felt that this was indicative of the fact that the original preference of the owners was actually to demolish the building and start again. Again, not something they mentioned to us when they talked of making some renovations. We very much hope that this committee ratifies the recommendation from the planning officials and that the proposal is rejected. Thank you.
Thank you. Do members have any questions? No, thank you very much. Anyone here on behalf of the applicant or the agent? No. Thank you very much. I open it for debate. Councillor Higgins.
Yes, I'll very briefly actually. I'll go with officer recommendation, but also I am aware of what we had sometimes with the basement issue on another refusal, and we didn't mention it, and it sort of was.
Well, the basement is a reason for refusal
exactly.
on this one.
Yeah, exactly. So I just want to make sure that we emphasise that as a committee. That's what I'm refusing for.
It is a clear. It's one of the refusal reasons this time out.
Okay.
So there are no debates. No, you are entirely correct.
So I go with officer recommendation.
Councillor Oswald.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'll second that.
Anybody else want to speak? No. All those in favour of refusal, please clearly show. Thank you very much. Sansapur, are you in favour of refusal? Thank you. That one is refused unanimously. I move to item 8, which is a non-petition item, 31 Frithwood Avenue, Northwood.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 8 on the agenda is for the change of use of 31 Frithwood Avenue from a 12-bedroom bed and breakfast to an 8-bedroom care home, involving a part 2-storey, part single-storey re-extension and enlargement of the roof space. I can take members through the plans. It's the site location plan. You know, it's a relatively open site on the corner. It's the proposed block plan. Existing plans, existing elevations. It's the proposed block plan again with the parking to the rear. Proposed floor plans. Proposed elevations. Aerial photograph. And this is some photographs of the area, which shows how prominent the site is. This is the rear of the site. It's the rear amenity area at present. There's some internal photos and then views from the site looking outwards. That's the rear area. It's a neighbouring property. This is the front property. Okay, members will be familiar with the site as a similar application was presented to North Planning Committee on the 13th of March this year with a resolution to refuse. There is no objection to the principle of a change of use of the building. The proposed care home would provide adequate facilities for future residents and would provide acceptable levels of on-site parking. While some alterations have been made to the previous scheme, it is considered that the current application does not adequately address the previous reason for refusal. Proposed re-extension, due to the size, scale and bulk, would not be a subordinate addition to the building, would increase the built-up appearance and reduce the garden openness at the rear of the site. The application is therefore recommended for refusal. Members will note there is a single addendum item, which is a letter from the planning agent. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I recall seeing this in its previous incarnation back in March, and the sense that I have is that of the officer here, that they haven't really done enough to address the refusal reasons that we gave back in March. Is still, what they're proposing is still overly large and constitutes really overdevelopment. So for those reasons, I'm happy to support the officer's recommendation on this.
Go on, Councillor Higgins. I'm not.
I'll second that.
Okay. Anybody else want to come in? No. Okay. All those in favour of refusal, please clearly show. Thank you very much. That one's refused. Item 9 would appear to be incredibly straightforward. Does anyone need a presentation on it? It's a mast in the middle of the Mount Vernon site.
Yeah, I'll move the officer's recommendation.
Oh, I've got to move in a second. You have to be quick in this game. Yeah, third and a fourth. Right, all those in favour, please clearly show. Can I ask members to note agenda item 10, which is the report on the S106s. Can I then ask for the live feed to be switched off so we can do the part 2s, please?